What's wrong with pro wrestling and how to fix it, part two. If you haven't seen the part one, you can go back and watch the part one. Otherwise, enjoy this part two, because I will go into further how I think wrestling can be fixed, because you know it needs fixing right now. I want to start out with the Goldust Trio. Now, for the last 100 years, the thing that these three guys have done, Joseph Bond, Ed Lewis, and Billy Sandow, they have basically came up with a modern format of wrestling as we have now. And the format is what they have done. Is, before they came up with the innovations, they really didn't have any time limits. There was no regular rosters. It was basically going from show to show to show. And as we know, any new industry that comes up, it's going to go through hard times, hard developments. Eventually, it's going to come out. It's going to be new innovations. And at that time, wrestling has probably been around maybe for 30 years. But what you see today is exactly what they did. So what happened was that they came up with things like innovation, like time limits. We didn't have any time limits, so they had to get time limits in. Disqualifications, signature holds, cheating tactics, how the referees work. They came up with the idea of tag teams, also with storylines, angles, build-ups, and promotions, and the idea of having a regular roster. Before this, none of this actually took place. It was just basically there was no television, there probably no radio maybe. And it was just, you had to go to a live show. Since you went to a live show, they either traveled or, you just caught a live show and that was it. You saw the next one, and it wasn't like something that took place as a regular event. But I guess the Goldust Trio saw something in wrestling, and they know it was actually a work back then, even before they started. So they said to themselves, well, if it's a work, let's develop a format for it so we can have an actual way for people to come back over and over again, so there'll be steady pay, as a regular form of entertainment. That's what they saw it was going to. Basically, that's been the format all the way up till today. That was basically 100 years ago. So this gives me an idea of what I want to take wrestling after the next 100 years coming in. After they came up with their stuff, probably in the 1930s, you begin to have territory systems, you begin to have promotions, you begin to have what they call fiefdoms. People had their own territories. They begin to develop wrestling promotions, advertising. People begin to know names and angles and stuff like that, and they begin to have regular shows. If you see here, the old territory system, where basically if you were the biggest promotion, you were like the only ones that could basically, be the ones to go to. You were the only show in town. There was competing shows, but eventually, as time goes on, once you become the dominant player in a territory, you became the dominant player in that territory, and you stayed out of other people's territories. So that's how it began. So sometimes they would steal talent. And with the advent of television, late 1940s and 50s, you begin to see better pay. You begin to see the same big names, and actually the pay for the wrestlers as compared to other sports was basically number two. They were making a lot more money in the 1950s than most baseball players and football players and basketball players. That's how it just grew and big and big and big until I'd say 1948. They had to have a lot of the people got together, and what they've done, they decided to have an industry representative, the industry standards. They began to respect each other's territory more. So the idea of a National Wrestling Alliance came into being in 1948. And what that did, they had a committee that would come together, board of directors. They would approve who would be the NWA. The NWA had their own belt. They would basically be a representative from the wrestling world to the rest of the world. And that it would be an industry standard. There would be everything that the NWA represented to the rest of the world. And they had affiliates, agreements with all the other territories. They weren't a separate promotion, but they were like representing all promotions. That was the idea. So we go from an innovation to having a wrestling format to the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, where everybody would work together and have agreements. You know, it became a business like any other sport. And professional football had its growth pains, and they grew into what you see now. So basically, that's what happened with wrestling. Even boxing kind of got jealous of what was going on, and they even knew it was a work. So up until 1940s, the NWA started. I would say like another 40 years it became relevant, and after that it kind of dropped off, even though the NWA title was still active, but it wasn't as important even up till last year. So I believe at this time NWA is gone. The territories are really gone because the WWF under Vince McMahon Jr. began to unravel the territory system. So the territory system was seen that as the 1980s came rolling in, it was seen as something old to him because the WWF did not participate in the NWA. At a certain time they did, but then they left. It wasn't mandatory, but they decided to leave. So his father continued in the Northeast. When Vince McMahon Jr. bought it, his idea was to go into a national league. I'm sorry, not a national league, but a national promotion. A national promotion that would basically shut down everybody else. That was his grand idea that he really didn't tell his father, but he had his ideas. And so he began to send his matches to different TV stations. He began to offer more money to talent, and those who couldn't hold on to the talent basically lost to Vince McMahon. A lot of the people from the AWA made up a lot of his roster, and one of his famous wrestlers, including Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter. A lot of them came up to New York because of the money. The same way the New York Yankees had a lot of money and they brought in a lot of people. You know, that's basically the way it works. I mean, once you got loyalty, the money speaks. But we'll be lost to the old territory system. We gave it a national. We wanted that strong national organization, but I believe there's something that's been missing the NWA didn't do. So here's my idea that I have. I'm thinking, why not combine the territory system with a national system or a national promotion, but making them more than affiliates, like the NWA was some affiliates, make them more franchisees. See, the franchise system never worked, was never utilized in the pro wrestling business. I'm thinking it's time to do it now. But this is what the NWA missed out after the WWF. Back then it was called, pushed away into the national scene and basically eliminated most of the territory system. I say keep both and build it into what we call a sports league, like the NBA, the NHL, NFL, Major League Soccer, and so on. You can think of it as territory versus territory. But I want to add a twist to this program, though. Even though it's territory to territory, you can have local people, you can have national people, but at the same time, you start a league. Because most promotions have mostly focused on single matches with tag teams as an afterthought. So my idea is this: the Tag Team League Wrestling. I want to take tag team leagues and make it into a Thai wrestling league. For the purpose of, I want to promote wrestling as a sport rather than as a show, as a business. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, I want to go back to fundamental. I want to go back to the things that we only see part-time and make that into a different product. This is going to be all for tag team only. This is what's going to separate my idea of a wrestling league from everybody else's. No more single matches, just all tag teams. And there's a lot more that I have. I'm going to have a new look. I'm going to have new rules. Yes, we're going to have more rules. I'm going to make it out of the analog ages, out of a show into something that's presented as sports. I want to have faster pace of matches and more technical mat wrestling. Now, this may be a shock to you. You may think, well, it shouldn't be that way. Well, take a good look at what you see on TV right now. Look at the ratings. Compare the ratings that you see today and then go back as far as 10 years ago. Totally different. And with the advent of social media, in a video that appeared in 1979 called Plan B, basically, I would say 99% of the people already know it's a word. It's not a sport. And, if they were really into the real wrestling, we wouldn't need this, but think of this as a transitional league from what you see now as a show into what is a sport. Now, I came up with all these teams because I wanted to have teams in different various cities. That's if we have, availability to go to cities. If we don't, we can always use the team names, take the team names, or what you call cliques. Having cliques in wrestling didn't make any sense to me, since if you're not a tag team or individual participant, having cliques doesn't make any sense to me. It never did. So if they're gonna have cliques, why not just all have them go under the same name? Clique versus clique, as promotion as promotion. Think of it like that. So I want to have make it look closer to what you see in the NBA or the NHL, And plus, think of it as this: you have a lot more team merchandise to sell, in addition to ticket sales and TV revenue. You also have merchandise. You got more merchandise to sell, rather than one individual, selling a T-shirt here, maybe a hat here. I think there's more money in this, having team gear to sell. Now, here are the rules that I want to talk about. Each match is going to be a 3 5-minute period match. One final match in case of a tie. So we're going to have 3 minutes, so that every match is going to have the same time. It's not going to be 20-minute time limit or 1 hour time limit and change it as it's going to be standardized all throughout the whole league. You're going to have every 5 minutes. You're going to stop and start up a new match. And between stops, here's another rule that I have. Yes, it is a tag team. We're going to have tags, but they're only going to be 1 tag per period. So you're only going to have up to 3 tags. You can tag anytime you want, but if you have tag, it has to be no contact before the tag out. So the referee breaks it up and says, break it up and start all over again. That's where you can tag out. Now, I'm going to do another change too. This is going to be revolutionary. This is going to be something like to a shock to some of you. But this is another thing I want to do to change. It's like you're watching Canadian football and you see 3 downs instead of 4 downs. I'm going to have a 2 count instead of a 3 count. I feel that the 2 count is much more realistic than the 3 count. If you think about it, 3 count is really a long time. 2 counts basically a long time, but if it's a 2 count, typically in wrestling you get your shoulders pinned, that's it. But for those who know, we're still a show. You're gonna know about these little rules, a 2 count, and then that's what it's gonna be. I want to speed it up the matches and stuff like that, because each team is gonna be like 5 people on a team. So I figure 1 match is going to be 2 teams. Here's another rule that I thought I may have to make changes to. I'm not sure. I have a split match that can take place if one wrestler loses and cannot continue, so the other wrestler can continue, where usually the team loses if one team member is pinned or a technical fall. So what that means is if one player one wrestler can't wrestle anymore, the other wrestler may volunteer to continue the match. Though this is something that I came up with. It's, eventually anything that's new is going to have changes going to be made. So if you don't understand this, maybe I don't understand this, but I came up with this just in case there need be. I'm going to make modification to it, so don't worry about that. And here's another thing I thought of. Any participant can be counted on if they are on their back for a 3 count, even though no contact is being made. So what that means is that's basically a technical fall. A technical fall is when you have you have a pinfall without actually pinning somebody. I've seen matches where, the real top grudge matches, the main event matches where they go back and forth so many times and then just lay on the back and then tied. You can see the breathing heavy. To me, wrestling, it's all about staying off your back. At least in the real wrestling, it's always about getting off your back. But in the pro wrestling, it's just the opposite. So I thought to speed the match up, and there's no timeouts. You shouldn't have time to just stay there and catch your breath. You got to keep going. The referee's going to say 1, 2, 3. That's it. So if you don't want to get counted out, you got to roll back on your stomach, even if no one's wrestling. That's actually called passivity too. In the real game. And here's another innovation I came up with. You may scratch your head. So what does this mean? A sliding pin is a legal pin. Now you can pin someone to the mat, 1, 2, and that's it. But they don't have to be stationary. You can actually slide someone across the mat. As long as they're on their back, it's considered a pin for the count of 2. You'll see that if we ever get this off the ground. Okay, both wrestlers must begin each match behind the center marks and during a reset. So every time it's broken up. This is something I took from freestyle wrestling. Every time you restart, you have to go back to the center. The way they have it now is like boxing. You just break it up and you just keep going where you are. But I want to have a reset. Plus, that's the time you can tag out. Even a tag out, you have to go back and reset. I want to make it more uniform and even. And speaking of uniform, everyone's going to be a uniform. It's going to be a singlet. Sorry, no questions asked. This is a fast and hard rule. That's what it is. That's what it is. And we're also going to have organized by the weight class. Remember, this is a transitional league. We're transitioning from the circus, what you see right now, with the high spots and all the stuff that just doesn't look professional to me. This is my idea of what it should be like. In each team, the teams I'm gonna get explain what the teams are in the next video if I get to part 3. But in this part, I'm just laying out the ground rules. We're gonna have, I would say, at least 4, maybe 5 tag teams that will equal 8 to 10 people on a team. So it's going to be weight class. I'm also going to have weight class below 200 pounds too. I'm going to make this league and create the image that a wrestler can be small under 200 pounds, what you call small, but I don't call them small. Because the average wrestler, rare wrestler, is like 150, 160 pounds. Over 200 is considered heavy. But what we see now, what we have seen, especially under Vince McMahon, we basically bodybuilders, football-sized guys, which I have nothing against. But the football guy size, like The Rock, and you got guys over 300, 400 pounds, that's okay if they wrestle guys their own size. I think that's more of a matchup. That's what they call a match. But a mismatch, 400-pound guy versus a 210-pound guy, that's just unrealistic. If you're going to have big guys, make sure you got a lot of big guys. Because it's going to be organized by 5 tag teams. It's going to be tag team. I haven't decided what the weight classes are. Maybe I'll get to that in the next video. But we're going to have a match, evenly weighted match. And no striking by open hand, closed hand punching, smacking. No more of that Ric Flair stuff or closed hand. Kicking, throwing against someone against the rope, giving to the boot to the face. Nope, none of that. Elbow, no more flying elbows like Macho Man. I don't want to see that. Knee, stuff like that. Brutus Barber, Beefcake. All that stuff. Like there are basically two type of wrestlers. You got the Dean Malenko type, man of 1,000 holds, technical wrestler, and you got the Paul Orndorff style, where he just beats you, kick you, all that stuff. The guy, I like Paul Orndorff. I got nothing against him, but he was never technical. It was always punching and just kicking and all that other stuff and slamming people around. No strategy whatsoever. This is gonna be a strategy-based wrestling. This is gonna be fast, what you call chain wrestling. There's no time to kick someone down and punch them and all that stuff. It's just not gonna happen. Also, that leads to battles when they're outside the ring. No outside interference, no objects, no canes, nothing like that. I'm trying to change the image. These are the things that they started 100 years ago. So up until now, this is going to be part of the new look. And also, on dropping, we gotta get safety too. I don't want anybody dropping people on the head. No headlocks around the neck. And actual wrestling, you're allowed to do a headlock unless you got the arm locked too. That way you don't choke someone to death. That also has to lead to head cranks. It's kind of like a headlock where you're moving the person's head closer to their chest, make it hard to breathe. With the windpipe, other chokeholds and stuff like that. We're not doing chokeholds. Like Andre the Giant would kick you in the corner and just put his big hands around your neck. That's to me, that's combat stuff. If it's gonna be wrestling, it has to look like wrestling. You see, no leg, wrist, or hand locks. None of this figure 4 leg lock stuff. No wrists, twisting someone's arm and stuff like that. Hand locks. That's MMA stuff. I want to separate the image from the MMA to tag team, the actual wrestling. I want to actually look like a wrestling match, and not some combat stuff like that. And to keep it all, keep everything in place to enforce the rules, I'm going to have 2 people. It's going to be a referee inside on the mat, and outside judge. I know you're thinking how's anything interesting is going to happen. Yeah, all the interesting things that's going to happen is going to be on the mat. It's going to be focused. It's going to have an athletic focus, something that the AEW said they would do. But if you look at the product, they're nowhere near that. They just said that, during their press conference to make them sound different. But when you look at the product is crap. I think it's all crap. I think the NXT is crap. Ring of Honor, I think it's crap. TNA is crap. It's just all crap. It's all going out. But this idea pushes forward. We already have a new type of audience. They're getting sick of what they see now. And also this getting wrestling out of bounds, outside the ring stuff, doing high spots and just having battles outside. It's like a personal grudge match. And I think there's way too much of that stuff. How in the world are you going to wrestle outside? You got a referee and no one's counted out. Never happens. People are getting slammed all over the place. It's too wild. Sorry, but I like my wrestling boring. So if you do go out, like other sports, they have automatic clocks begin to go off. So you have 8 seconds to get back into the ring. Unless it's a tag, then you got that extra 2 seconds, 10 seconds. Again, I want to have a faster paced match. I want more wrestling. I don't want people standing in the side, out in the side with a microphone on, talking heads. I don't want to see that. I got sick of that back in the mid 2000s. I don't want to see it now. So here's how the league is going to be divided. It's going to be geographically divided into two parts. We're going to have all the teams in the West and all the teams in the East. Right now, this is how I want to do it. I'm not sure, but basically to cut down on the travel, all the Eastern Division teams are going to wrestle each other up until the championship. All the playoffs are going to take place in the same region. Same with the West. There's going to be a lot less teams in the West than there are in the East. So maybe it'll be changed. I'm not sure, but right now I'm going to be geographical because of the travel. To cut down on the expenses and stuff like that. And then when you do the championship, that's when the Western Division and Eastern Division are going to face off. But interdivisional matches, I'm kind of up in the air right now, but right now I'll just say no. But it could change. If we have places where we just operate out of one or two places, then it's going to be different then. But if we go back to the road, travel on the road, which it looks like it may. I see the NFL coming back. I think the NBA is doing it. As time goes on, if they go back to regular, teams traveling and stuff. That's another thing too I want to talk about. Is everybody's going to travel as a team. Because right now, when you get paid, and all your expenses come out that pay. Like you have to pay to travel, to get from spot to spot. There's no. I mean, there might be travel if you go overseas, but right now, if you're in the domestic United States, people don't realize it, but you do have to do your own travel. Some of these guys are driving in cars, going from one place to another. Some guys in some smaller organizations don't even want to travel. They just want to stay in the same area. Maybe go out no more than 400 miles or something like that. They like to stay at home. They like to have domestic. They don't want to be on the road constantly. But another thing I'm gonna get to in the next video, I'm not gonna have this league going all year round. It's not gonna be all year round. I'm probably gonna go 6 or 7 months, maybe 8 at the most, and that's it. The season ends, we start all over again. So there won't be any belts. There'll just be a trophy championship match at the end, and that's it. They go home, they get the rest, recuperate. If you look at the MMA, UFC guys, they only do like maybe a few matches a year. They don't go week to week. Something about wrestling, it's really a TV show. It's a weekly TV show, and they record it in front of a live audience, and they just every single week. Like realistically, you can beat yourself up, get hit with chairs, and get punched out, and just be here. Come back again, 3 days later. Historically, especially in Tennessee and the Southeast, they would have shows like basically almost every day, or at least 3 or 4 days a week. That was a steady paycheck. That was back in the territory days. Now, when you have a national organization, you travel, so it's not like you have weekly shows. You have weekly shows, but you got to travel. These guys are on the road 11 months on the year. I think that's too much. So we're going to keep it model after a team league. Also, here, look at the ring. Also, an idea I wanted to change. I don't know if you've seen Shane McMahon, what he did with his fighting thing. I like to look at that. That's exactly what I was thinking of. We have right now, we got basically a boxing ring with 3 ropes instead of 4. So I think we should, instead of having this, I think we need to just get rid of it. We can get this instead. It's more open to the crowd. You can see what's going on. There's no ropes. This is not boxing. You don't need to have people in ropes in wrestling. That's something that came out of boxing. I don't know when it started. Maybe it started 100 years ago. But for now, it's not needed. Plus, another reason I want to do this is I want to have the logos, maybe the team logos, depending on if they have a home base. I want to make it more interesting. I don't want a plain ring like we have in WWE. I want to at least put the organization name in there. You know, you just have the logo in the middle. Also, another thing that I think that's wrong, what's going on is a lot of money is being left on the table with these sponsors. Now, I know that they have these TV contracts, and maybe they have an issue with the advertising. But even look at a baseball game or look at a football game, sometimes you'll see actually, you have banners, you have company advertisement banners actually in the place. You see them along the baseline. Baseball, you see them. Wherever the camera is focused, sometimes they'll have advertising, insurance companies or whatever. They'll actually advertise. They'll put a banner out there, and that's revenue because they're getting exposed on TV. I'm not going to look like NASCAR or something like that. It's not going to be. It's not going to be logos everywhere. And we'll keep it conservative, but I think it's a lot of money that's wasted. Any money left on the table. I shouldn't say wasted, but I would say money left on the table that we have opportunity to get, especially if you have at least one big sponsor. You know, boxing, you have that. They don't have it in wrestling, especially in small time wrestling. That I never understood that. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching this. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. And watch for part 3. I don't know when I'm going to come up with a part 3. I'm not sure. But like and subscribe so I can get many more people to watch this. And if you missed the first one, go back and watch the first one and watch this one. I'm also going to post this video on my other channel, which I will put. And also I'm going to have merchandise for sale. I want to see who's interested in this. If you like this idea, I'm going to have shirts and hats, hoodies for sale. You know, pushing the league. If it's not, I want to see where this goes. I'm going to put as much stuff on social media as possible. I just want to gauge people's reactions. As the Wrestling League has been started last year, I think it was called I forget what it was called, but what they did, they had exhibition matches just to gauge the people's reaction, but it never went off. So it kind of just faded away. So I think we need to do this for this thing. I want to gauge people's reaction. Tell people in the wrestling world, you think this is what you needed in wrestling, to go from the old analog to the new digital, to be more lifelike, more realistic. If you think so, give it a thumbs up. And thank you for watching.